AmandaLand.
It's the AmandaLand Ambassadors of the Week. Get it on, yo. Get it on. Get it on, yo. Get it on. Yes. Hello. All right, Dejah, can we get you a little more
center?
Yes, perfect. And Aru, how are you?
Hi, so great to be on.
Yeah, it's great to meet you. I was a big fan of Small Doses. It got me through college. So great to meet
you. Small Doses.
EMT, we're serving up.
Well, welcome to the show. This is Aru and Dejah of the Sunrise Collective and the Sunrise Movement. And I really feel like I came across you guys because of course on this internet this algorithm is full of it, but ever so often it does bring me into spaces with people of like minds, and you guys are that. And I think that there just really isn't enough conversation around how climate change factors into our resistance in a very literal way. Like, it's not esoteric, it's not something that you have to like expand to include. It's already there. You just have to know how to point it out. So I want to talk first about what the Sunrise Movement is and what you guys do. You guys, normally I tell them that they have to address their questions by people's last names, but since it's two of you, you can say, Aru and Dejah, or Miss Aru and Dejah, because we are in a class. All right, so y'all send your questions through in the chat. But again, so let's get to talking. What is the Sunrise Movement?
Yes, I can kick us off a little bit. Aru, feel free to jump in. But Sunrise is a youth-led climate movement that's organizing, building power to stop the climate crisis, create millions of good jobs. We have over 100 hubs across the country of young people who are doing direct action, organizing, campaigning around climate. We do this in some of our trainings, but I like to say this is like not your local eco club. We're like not about recycling and composting, though that work is very important. We are like a youth organization that's trying to build people power and political power to like meet the scale and urgency of the climate crisis with the type of like action it demands.
And where did this begin and how? And by whom?
It started around 7 years, or yeah, is it 7 now? Oh,
like
8
time.
Time.
It's flying.
I joined Sunrise when I was right out of my freshman year of college, and that was like right around when it started. It was like 2017, and it was just a bunch of kids from around the climate movement who were like, actually, nobody is taking seriously this issue, and we need to do something about it, and we need to make politicians do something about it. And it's as simple as that. And I often say to young organizers, like, small groups of people with the courage to dream a little bigger than what's possible is what changes the world. And I think Sunrise is really an example of that. Like, a bunch of people sat in a room and said, this isn't working. Let's do something else. Let's do something that's actually going to transform our political system in the ways that we need.
What wasn't working?
I think the truth is that before Sunrise, like, climate was dead in the water as a political issue. People were like, well, we can't do anything about climate because it would like kill jobs. It was like so low on the Democratic list of priorities. And I remember, I helped knock a lot of doors in 2018, and the Democrats won the House. And then there was this like article that came out that was like, Dems damp down hope on climate. And I think we at Sunrise just like didn't take that lying down. Like, right after that, we did a sit-in in Nancy Pelosi's office calling on the Democratic Party to like create a select committee around the Green New Deal and actually like try to tackle the greatest crisis of our time. And that, I think that's what wasn't working. And that's what we decided to change, is we were like, politicians have to take the climate crisis seriously. And this is a defining issue of our generation.
Yeah, and I think it was the boldness and audacity of Sunrise to me that pulled me in. I'm from Chicago. I joined 6 years ago and went to a training, and I'm hearing these kids talk about the fossil fuel industry and about the Democratic Party and how we need to be like sitting in our senator's office and like asking them to support the Green New Deal. And there was something about pushing for bold action, even if at times it felt impossible. And we'll talk about some of our plans of what we're cooking up over the next 4 years, but it was just like to be bold and to like meet the moment with the types of like action organizing that's needed is what I find to be so like inspiring about our movement.
Can you just, for clarity purposes, let folks know what is the Green New Deal?
You go, Ferry.
Yeah, so the Green New Deal was introduced, I believe, there's like a whole history out like Green Party and things like that, but the Green New Deal is sort of a comprehensive vision to address the climate crisis. It was introduced by Ed Markey and AOC in Congress, but it's a bill that's essentially about decarbonizing, but not just like reducing our carbon emissions. It's about like investing in Black, brown, poor, working class communities. So like a just transition. It's about green union jobs. Like it will take a lot of work to transition every sector of our economy onto one that runs on clean energy. And so how do we like ramp up jobs for young people and all people in this country? Those are some of the like core tenets of the Green New Deal. So like a policy vision that meets the climate crisis at the like scale.
Outside of, addressing politicians, one of the things on your website speaks to your strategy and education of the people really being the cornerstone of the strategy. So can you talk to me more about that? Because I'm just a strong proponent at this point of the fact that education is really the solve across the board for literally everything.
Yeah, I mean, we're a movement driven by people power. I would say like our fundamental belief about the way that society works is that society works because everyday people choose to make it work. Like we're the ones who do the actual, like run the trains, like drive cars, deliver things, pack boxes. Like that is all, go to school. Like that is all just things that everyday people do. And part of the reason, I think there's a sense that change will only happen if you convince the people in charge. And the reality is that actually, if you convince everyone not in charge, if you convince the masses of people, you're actually able to create enormous change. So that's where I think the education piece comes in. And training and leadership development is a really huge part of our strategy of actually equipping people with the organizing skills and also the orientation, the strategic understandings that they need to be able to run campaigns wherever they are.
And so how do you go about doing that? I mean, this is a different time. I feel like there may be more access to people, but also like more impediments at the same time. It's like an odd.
Yeah, I think some of the vehicles that we do this around education are like social media. There's a lot of political education that happens through our like graphics, through the videos, through our storytelling. We also run trainings. So we just had a training in Colorado where like 90 plus members and leaders from across our movement came together to learn how to put on mass trainings in their communities.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So
it was a training about training.
It was a training of trainers. Yes.
Okay.
And we think that's how we like scale our movement and reach as many people as possible. And we're also kicking off a series of regional trainings across the summer where we're like, how do we get our vision and our strategy of like dismantling and like ending the oligarchy and actually putting a government in place that will stop the climate crisis, but many other issues. And we think trainings are a way, not just where we like consciousness raise and educate people, but we also move them to action. And so often there are calls to actions that are like, we're planning an action through our campaigns, plug in. So yeah, I think a lot of it is a mix of like, how do we educate people? But so much about organizing and movement building is like, what are we calling people to do in action together?
I mean, honestly, I feel like that is also education. Folks don't know what to do. Folks don't know what to activate, how to activate. We have effectively, as an American, as a USian culture, been trained to be docile, right? And been trained to be like, please, sir, more rights, sir. Rights, not rice. There's a very real brainwashing that has effectively convince people that their only way, and Aru, you just said this, that their only method of getting any level of change is to ask for it versus to make demands, and also to just demonstrate that this is a thing that's happening, which is also why I love that you all are called Sunrise Movement, not Sunrise Collective, right? Because like, a collective is just like, we all here, like we might do some stuff, but ultimately we gonna hang out. That's what we gonna do.
Yeah. And I think our biggest opportunity in this moment, like there's so much despair and so many people that are like doom scrolling on social media, maybe do not believe in the power of organizing. We saw like the 2020 uprisings, mass protests. And if you look at the like material lives of many Black people in this country, very little has changed. And so I think there's this opportunity for us to figure out how do we communicate to people that like organizing and movement building can work. And we need to do it at a scale that our country has never seen before. And especially as we think about what it's going to take to resist Trump, we see him 2028 hats. I'm like, you legally cannot run for president in 2028. And I think we need to be thinking about how we build the type of power that will say, no, you must go, as we continue to resist his current attempts to capture, as he is doing, and taking over our government now.
And I think a lot of our analysis around that is, in order to effectively do that, like, people voted for Trump because this system is not working for most people, as you were saying, Dejah. And part of what we actually need to do is articulate a vision of a society that works for everyday people, of a government that works for everyday people, and call Trump out for like the oligarchic president that he is. Like, he's an authoritarian, and he's not for working class people. He's not for everyday people. And I think like making that really clear in the ways we campaign, and particularly campaign around climate, which I think is actually an issue that touches so many people's lives and is his most unpopular issue, is a really important opportunity. Like, he is going to mess up on this, and it is really important. There's a vocal youth climate movement that's able to say, like, if you want a livable future, we have to kick this guy out. We have to end the reign of big oil, of oligarchs in this country, and be able to build a government that works for all of us.
Where did the Democrats fall in that? Because I think there is definitely a I'm just gonna be nice and say there's a hopeful commitment by many people to the Democrats, feeling that they are counter to that. In your work and in your experience, where would you say they stand at this point?
You don't need to be nice. I would say we are often not nice. Yeah, I mean, I would say, like, one thing I'll say is that I don't think it's always helpful to think of parties as like one thing. I think of parties as arenas that we can contend for power within. And yeah, I'm like, a lot of the establishment Democratic Party is trash. Like, they have been cowardly, and they have like failed to address the root of the problem. And I think they have huge responsibilities in terms of how we got to where we are now. And also, I think that like the Democratic Party is not just the people in charge of the Democratic Party. There are like enormous amounts of people who would be considered the Democratic base that are also the party and have control over the party. And I'm like, that is like that I think about the insurgent wing of the party that's rising, in my opinion, the opportunity that there is for it to continue rising. Like, I think we've really
the insurgent wing of the Democratic Party. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's like I would say like people like AOC, but also people like Zoran Mamdani and Brandon Johnson. And like, there are these people who are trying to redefine the Democratic Party to be more than what it has been historically. And frankly, I think that that's the only way for the Democratic Party to survive. Like, this milquetoast, like bland policies that they put forward, where they just keep advocating for the status quo, and they're too afraid to like say anything bad to Trump because like decorum and like gotta follow the rules. Like, that's not gonna cut it. Nobody wants to vote for that. And I think part of what we're trying to do is be like, we are going to create the mass movement energy that is so strong that, you know, politicians are like weather winds. They will follow where they think they can win. And I don't think there's any way that Biden would have won the 2020 election if it weren't the huge uprisings that happened before against Trump. And I'm like, mass movement momentum actually does allow politicians to like shift in the moment. I think the key is that we actually are able to translate that mass movement momentum into like power to actually block things. Like, I'm like, can we actually translate that to, we have 20 million people in the streets, and also if you don't pass what we want you to pass, we will turn back into the streets and like not let life go on as normal until you give us what we want. And I think having that, not just mobilization power, but organizing power to translate it for the long haul, is really key. But I think that's how you shift the party. And I'm like, yeah, I don't trust a lot of the Democratic Party. And also, we have to see them as an arena where we contend for power.
Dejah, how has your ideologies, your belief in this system, if at all, shifted since you joined Sunrise?
Yeah, it's interesting. I've been having a lot of conversations with friends around this, where you like enter as a baby organizer and people are pitching you on the visions and the plans, and you're like, anything is possible. And I remember 2020 when Bernie was running, and I went out to Iowa to go canvass for him, and he was talking about Sunrise and his rallies, which is like huge for a presidential nominee to like
absolutely
give airspace to your movement. And I think over the years we've, you know, seen the Jamal Bowman Cori Bush, where we're like, canvassing and doing work, and these institutions like APAC just crush them.
Yeah.
And I think it has been pretty clear how the tweaking around the system has not worked for our organizing. And that's why I feel most excited about Sunrise's long-term plan of like, we need masses of people organized to push for a real like revolution of sorts, I'd like to say, of our current political system. Like, we need a government, like Aru has talked about this before in the past, of like, that can legislate and pass bills week after week to address not just the climate crisis, but other issues and ills in society. And we don't have a government that does that. And so I think in a lot of ways, I've like gotten closer to the root of the problem, which I think demands a far greater organized response. And, I'm still going to knock doors. I live in New York City, have been knocking doors for Zoran, and really excited to see what happens. Do not want Eric
Zoran
Adams
need to come on the show.
You should get him on the show.
I mean, I have his contact, but then I part of me was like, so I want a politician on the show.
But he has.
So his one of his comms people DM'd me, but they were like, you should talk about Zoran's, like they wanted me to talk about Zoran. And I was like, oh, baby, no, like that's not what this is. If you want to come on and talk about it, or you want to come on and talk about it, fine. But I'm not going to I don't endorse candidates.
Yeah.
I don't.
I mean, I think the thing that's interesting for him is he's like talking about issues that affect everyday people, about free buses in New York City, about childcare, about rent, about the housing crisis. And it's like, we need to be speaking to issues that affect people materially. And also, thinking about the organizing around climate, connecting those issues with how those will worsen and, I guess be exacerbated by the climate crisis.
So basically what I'm gathering, though, is that you guys both feel like we have left the reformist stage.
I think we need I think we need huge transformations to our political system. Otherwise, shit will fall apart. That is how I think about the next few years.
Now, in terms of the young people that you're working with, what do we consider young people?
Yes, so we organize
young at heart.
We do have a young at heart movement. So we organize folks under 35, and so many people are like, "What happens when I turn 36?" I'm 29, so I got 6 more years. But we organize folks under 35. That's how we define youth. We have high schoolers who are organizing across the country, college students, and then like young adults in communities across the country.
Okay, and then. So the thing about it is that for real reform, for real revolution to happen, right? Because I think when people think about revolution, they literally just think of Fidel Castro. Like that's where they're like, are we all wearing green? Are we walking through the Cuban countryside? And there's just so many multiple prongs of revolution that have to take place in this nation. How do we see the revolution for climate change existing in a real way in terms of your strategy and your objective?
Yeah, I think it's like the reason that climate is a really key part of this to me is that it is going to force capitalism and society into crisis. Like there is no way for it not to. It is currently doing it. Yes. And as that happens, there is a choice that we have about whether people want a better version of the world or a worse version of the world. And it is actually just that simple. And being like, when this happens, wouldn't you rather actually have like a government that is able to help you rebuild your home or help you relocate? Wouldn't you rather have a government that like builds seawalls? And I'm like,
no, let me just correct it, because I feel like we're getting into spiel territory, and I want to get us out of spiel territory. What it like earlier in the conversation, Dejah said, like, I want to talk about like the actual plans that we have that are about activating people beyond just, meeting and learning and doing sit-ins. Like because a revolution requires a multi-pronged approach, right?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
So what is the movement? How is the movement moving in ways that you can tell us? Because I know there's also stuff that has to be kept on the low.
Yeah, Dejah, you want to talk about 2028 stuff?
Yes, so we sort of have like a 3-phased approach over the next 4 years for how we want to approach sort of building the types of power to upend society and get a government that can like govern around climate. The first piece of it is around winning the public, and specifically for our fight around climate, connecting big oil to the current administration. And it's like pretty clear people aren't really thinking that much about the role of the fossil fuel industry and big oil and sending our entire society towards quite literally collapse.
Yeah.
And I'm like, these motherfuckers, to be honest, should not be walking around comfortably in society. And so for us, it's like, how do we do campaigning over the next year to really paint big oil and big oil oligarchs as the villain? I think some of this also connects to the Trump administration, just given, I think it was like $445 million they gave to his administration. They're like fueling fascism. And so how do we come after big oil? The second phase is, Aru, what's the second?
We talked about toppling the pillars, basically.
Yes.
We're like,
yeah.
I don't know if you've heard, the United Auto Workers has put out a call for mass strikes in 2028.
Yeah.
And we've basically been like, we want to align ourselves with that strategy and have.
Why are we waiting till 2028?
Honestly, it just takes a lot of time to get majorities of people willing to like not go to work or school. And I think that's why.
Fascinating.
And
I wish it was sooner, but it might happen. Like I always say that you never know what happens.
Well, to
like,
your point,
happen sooner.
It's pushing people to experience things in real time.
Yes.
So it may push a response to happen in real time sooner.
And I think the other bit of it is that there are things that are happening externally that we can't control. There are like trigger events, so we call them, that might be climate disasters. I'm surprised that LA wildfires weren't one event where people aren't waking up to like entire communities burning down.
Have you been to LA?
I haven't been to LA since.
But I mean, have you been to LA? Like, have you spent a time in LA?
Yeah. So I don't spend that much time there, but
it ain't that kind of town, baby. Like they're like, oh my God, fires. That's crazy. So do you want to go to the Grove? Since we can't go to Palisades, let's just go to the Grove. Yeah. Like,
and it's sad and devastating that it's going to take a disaster that takes probably many lives in this country, but there will be moments or red lines that are, so to speak, crossed that we need to be ready as movements to respond to. And it may be sooner that we need to be calling for boycotts at the scale that we've never seen before in this country, for levels of like civil disobedience and mass noncompliance. And like as Aru said, it just does take a lot of organizing and education of people and skill building to get our society ready for the types of strikes that we're trying to organize towards.
Someone in the chat just said not everyone in LA is like that.
Yes.
Not everyone anywhere is like anything.
Yes.
But the culture of a place is what ends up being the mass response to things, right? So, for instance, we talk about bad apple cops, but it's not that. It's that policing itself is a culture of harm. So even if there are good people in the police department, they are not protected by the police department. There are good people in LA. There are people that care about the way things move in LA. However, the culture of LA is industry and capitalism. And literally the mayor of LA, a Black woman named Karen Bass, has put so much money behind policing and behind corporate dollars that it is very clear that she also does not care in the same way. So miss me with that. Okay, sorry. I just had to. I hate a not all. I hate a not all argument. It's straw man. So we have some fabulous questions. And, you know, there has been a number of climate disasters that are happening right now. Like, we're seeing Josh Hawley literally asking Kristi Noem, like, will you tell President Trump about Missouri? We really need help in Missouri. It's like, well, you should have thought of that when y'all was saying that FEMA didn't matter no more.
Yes.
Well, this is why I think this whole like left, like Republicans, Democrats thing is, I'm like, listen, oligarchs and control are screwing over all of us. I go to rural areas and I talk to people, and sometimes those people are tracking climate change and climate effects more than a lot of people in cities because they see it right in their backyard.
Yeah.
And I think like this is the place where I'm like, climate has a real possibility to have populist appeal because people feel it in their lives.
Yes.
It matters.
Look at what happened with Hurricane Helene. You know, like those people are still rebuilding. They did not get support. And ultimately, they're like, even if we were political in response to being MAGA, et cetera, before, like now we're political in terms of why is our government not caring about us as people? And I feel like that's part of the education that you guys are doing is changing what political means, right?
And
Political
it's to your
is not
point about
about
changing
just
the
like,
culture too.
yes, well, that's the whole thing that has to shift is this culture, right? Like political is not what party you are a gang member of. And that's what some people really think. Like they're flagging like they're Democrats, like twisting up their fingers for the crats.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately political means you are aware of how the government is informing and involved in your life. And like you understand that that is not something that's passive. Folks in our chat are not passive, and so they have some questions. And Dejah is from Chicago, so she is also not passive. So
let's get into it.
Aru, where are you from?
I'm from Minneapolis.
All right, Minneapolis. Minneapolis is also not passive, as we learned with the George Floyd protest.
Very not passive. Do not take things lying down.
So Nigel D asks, is there a gap between the material lives and concerns and caring about climate change? I'm not sure I understand this question, but maybe you all do.
I think I do.
Okay.
Dejah, do you want to start or should I?
Yeah, I think I'm interpreting some of it of like, how do we make a stronger connection? I think, and sometimes I felt this as a young Black organizer, really trying to figure out how in Sunrise we organize young Black, Latina, poor and working class folks about climate is not the thing my family is thinking about on the day to day. It's like jobs, our school system, gun violence, and climate
how do we merge? I see.
Yeah, and I think how do we actually connect the issues that people are materially facing with the climate crisis? And I think the Green New Deal as sort of the vision that we were really organizing around has been the way to do that, to say like the crises around gun violence is connected to like disinvestment in education, in jobs. The Green New Deal is not just about decarbonizing, it's also about how do we put massive amounts of investments in our school systems and retrofit them. And how do we invest in teachers? Because that's like low carbon work and those types of things.
I went on a tour in 2014 called the Toxic Tour, and I went on with
in New Orleans
Caucus.
Was
Actually,
it in
it was all over the nation. So we
wow.
went to.
I love the hip hop caucus. They're awesome.
Yeah, shout out to the Reverend. We went to Detroit. We went to Virginia Beach or like Portsmouth, I think. We went to DC, and Baltimore. And we did go down to Louisiana, but I don't feel like we went to New Orleans. I can't remember. 2014 feels like it was a very long time. Yeah. But one of the things that I learned on that tour was just that, I think some people think of climate change and they're thinking of just like weather, not realizing that your climate that you exist in is not simply just the weather, it's the air you breathe.
Yes.
Right? It's the water that you have access to, it's the food that you eat, and that corporations are affecting that, which then also affects the weather.
Yeah.
And also we shouldn't be paying utility bills these days. Like we should have been developing like solar power and wind power that allowed like publicly owned power. Like you have bills you pay. Food is going to get more expensive. Like the money that comes out of your pocket, the bills you pay every day are going to be affected by climate change and already are. And I think part of what the Green New Deal does is like, it's hard sometimes to make those connections. So it's like, here are all the ways that stopping climate change can make your life better. And that's what's at the heart of the Green New Deal.
I think people think that if jobs go away, it's not replaced with resources. And what they think is that if jobs go away, then I will have nothing. And then if I have nothing, then I can't live. Not understanding that really what it is that if jobs go away that are harming people, and other systems are put in place for those particular jobs, a lot of the jobs that you're doing are not necessarily attached to like a specific skill or a specific preference, but just getting a check. So if the reason you're at that job is to get a check that you no longer have to pay, that gives you a greater opportunity to now go do something that you actually care about. And it relieves society. This is socialism, guys. It relieves society of this thing up here. And for what it's worth, majority of society is not interested in being a billionaire. And I think that's the thing that really gets misrepresented when we watch shows like the Kardashians, like and all
Mm-hmm.
of this like fantasizing about celebrity. It's that most people actually are like, I really just want to be able to comfortably feed my family and
Yes.
like have joy.
And have
that
time to
doesn't-
rest.
Yes.
And
And
not
like
work 50
opulence
plus.
is not really.
Yeah.
And for the record, let me just tell you, as somebody who has chased wealth, there was a well-bodied Black man from Brooklyn, New York, who once said, "Mo money, mo problems."
Yeah.
And he wasn't wrong. Okay.
No.
He
Yeah.
wasn't
Yeah.
wrong.
I think something that you reminded me of in sharing some of that is just like the visioning piece of it, where I'm like, there are so many ways we could operate as a society. And there's a book, What If We Get It Right, by Dr. Ayanna Elizabeth Johnson. She's like a Black marine biologist, really like hopeful book. But I'm like, I dream of days where there are like youth, like job programs where people intergenerationally get to come together to like invest in parks in their community, do political education around climate science. Like there are so many different ways to structure society and get at some of the like isolationism, individualism. And I think the thing about the Green New Deal that's really exciting is like, how do we envision a new society post-capitalism that is not running on like extractive industries, extractive employers and jobs? And yeah, I think that's like just really exciting to think about. Like there's space to vision what our society looks like. And right now we're living in the dreams of billionaires. And I'm like, how do we actually build the power to live in the dreams of working people?
Yes.
And I'm like, society will look significantly better and people will be so much more happier. And we need to like tell people that so that we're able to like build the power and bring people in our movements to like struggle and fight for that. Because I think there's the other thing. The last thing I'll say is we were on a abroad trip last year and talked to someone who was like, I just think Americans are too comfortable. There will never be revolution in the society. And I think we have to like make it pretty clear that the way that we're living right now in this country is also like not good. I think about housing.
People are very comfortable with their discomfort.
Yeah, I'm like we have this weird thing where the essentials are way too expensive, like healthcare and housing and childcare and elder care, and they distract us from that by giving us cheap things that break in a few months and we can just consume and they break apart all the time. I'm talking about like fast fashion all the time. And to fill the fact that we're not getting our basic needs met, but people are tricked into thinking that they are okay because you can buy a haul on Shein, you know, and like that is the way that modern capitalism is operating in a way that I think is really dangerous.
So I'm from Grenada. My people are from Grenada.
Yes.
And
I got to visit this March.
Really?
Yes.
Grenada.
I love exploring, hiking, waterfalls. There was like Seven Sisters. Yeah, it was a whole thing. But beautiful country. Yes.
You went to Seven Sisters.
Yes.
Okay. Well, let me tell you, while I was growing up, like we were always, and anybody who has immigrant relatives knows this, you always got to show up with at least 2 additional suitcases of all the things that are super expensive there that are inexpensive in the United States, right? And it would be things like toothpaste, lotion, soap, etc. And I just remember when I was growing up being like, why is everything so expensive here? That is how I look at here now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, why is everything so expensive here? Like, it's not even a difference anymore. Like, when people are like, bring us this, I'm like, it's the same here.
That is so relatable. And I've been through the same experience with my family. Yeah.
Where's your family from?
From Southern India, Kerala. Yeah.
Oh, so y'all got the suitcases. I mean, it's a very real thing, y'all. And people come and it's literally like you're like a mobile convenience store. Like people come and they go through the bags and they're like, I'll take this, I'll take this, I'll take this. You're like, thank you. Okay, so Cassie Carnahan has a question. Esteemed guest, what is up with these earth bag homes and earth ships? I haven't heard of any of this, so I don't know if you guys have. Are these realistic?
I haven't heard of this.
Okay, let me look it up. Earth bag homes.
I've heard about this a little bit. It's basically, earth bag homes. I don't know about earth ships. It's like making homes out of like clay materials, basically, is my understanding, and like sustainable building practices. I don't know the most about it. And so I'm going to give a slightly general answer, but I feel like what I will say is I'm like, I do think we need to be really innovating on a lot of the ways that we build things at scale. And I think that includes like creativity and different materials that we use and all of that. And I know that, you know, just from an emissions perspective, trying to look outside of concrete or how to make green concrete is like a big question that people have of like how to reduce emissions, which is where some of the earth bag home stuff comes on. I don't have a better answer on whether these are really realistic specifically. I haven't looked into them as much.
Well, you know, when I looked it up just now, real quick, I mean, most of these pictures are of homes, are replicates of homes that are in other nations. Like this is a home in Oman that is made from clay, right? And we know that when you go and you travel and you see these other ways of life, particularly in the continent, they have been living in sustainable homes for quite some time. I mean, of course, we are used to these palaces that we live in, but they're building homes of clay. You know, they're building sustainable homes of wood. There's a really famous clip of this carpenter who was on a show, like a call-in show in Britain, where the very just a-hole host was like, all right, so you're a carpenter, is that right? You're a carpenter. So please explain to me about what being a carpenter has to do with sustainability. What is that? What's the difference between what you do and concrete? And the guy is like, well, I mean, it's sustainable because you can grow trees. And then the guy's like, well, you can go concrete. You can grow concrete. And the guy just sits there in silence, like, because that's nonsense. He doesn't say anything. And the British guy and the host is like, well, we're going to not talk to James because we don't need to hear any of that nonsense, any of that bollocks. But I don't know about the earth homes, but what I will say is that exactly to your point, like the sustainability, the requirement, the ways to live, like, so much of the way we live is just because colonialism. That's it. For instance, in Grenada, so many of the ways that homes have been built in Grenada were just built off of like traditions of colonialism, taking how they built homes in England to come and build it the same way on a tropical island that has hurricanes. Like these two things don't align. And so often the homes get battered and destroyed, but then they get rebuilt the exact same way. And it doesn't consider the fact that, no, this part of the island, the wind is coming from this way. Don't build this like this.
There's a lot of indigenous wisdom that we need to like be taking into account as we figure out how to decarbonize, adapt. There's just so much knowledge. And sometimes it'll, because we are changing our climate, it might look like adapting that wisdom, but there's a lot there, a lot of richness there that we need to integrate into our government programs, into the way that we build things, the way that we plan cities and towns.
So Ross asks, how do y'all take care of yourselves as advocates for a place we as a species are destroying?
Yeah, honestly, the biggest thing for me is organizing. Like, I don't know. I think there are probably many young people that are sitting completely isolated, completely anxious, completely in despair. And I think being able to be in community, whether it's like I'm involved in the New York City hub, being on the National Organization of Sunrise, like with other people that are like wrestling and taking action and getting arrested and like standing up for the things we believed in. And then there's also the other little things where I'm like, I enjoy reading and meditating. And like, sometimes I just want to go out and enjoy life with my friends and not be so existential about the state of the world. But I think organizing is the place where I've been able to like quell or like get out some of my angst. Yeah, manage the anxiety that I have about the future. Because it's scary if you really sit with the level of devastation that's happening, with the current administration and what we have locked in around climate change. It is terrifying. And I think, organizing has been the way.
Yeah, I really agree with that. I think like so much of our society we are trained or forced to alienate ourselves. Like there's so much by which I mean like we are disconnected from our labor, from the nature. Like we are forced to like numb ourselves to the horrors of what is happening. And I think a lot of like capitalist like self-care is like, oh, like don't worry about it, like protect your peace. That type of vibe I think is actually like, I'm not saying never do that. Like I also, to be clear, like put down my phone, close like my
I take naps sometimes.
But if you always do that, like to me the most transformative things of self-care care have actually been when I have faced the grief of the world with other people and have like, I don't know, like Dejah and I have like been in rooms crying together about like what is going on in the world. And then we're like, and we're going to hold each other through that. And we're going to choose to fight anyway. And I think that is actually like the truest form of being able to move through the difficulty of the world involves facing it and choosing to fight, not avoiding it. And that's what I find organizing helps me do.
Yeah, I think the other thing as a little book nerd is just looking to history. Like, I think so much about my ancestors, enslaved Black people, and what they went through in this country and the odds that were overcome, and thinking about many other movements and the civil rights movement and young organizers in the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee who were like taking buses into the South and facing violence. Like, I think really grounding in history and being like, actually, history happens and transformation in this country happens through struggle. And being like, we are not special. And that there's like a lineage that we lie within is really grounding for me when there are moments that feel overwhelming.
Can you all each tell me what your environment was like in a real quick way, like what your environment was that you were raised in that got you here?
Yeah, this
I'm really trying to like
connect.
For people to understand, like this is how these people arrive.
Yeah, it's interesting. I grew up in Chicago, and my parents met at FedEx. You know, I have memories being in the break room watching
because FedEx called me 3 times while I was recording this show.
Oh, really?
I had to take a call earlier.
It was Dejah's parents. They were like,
it was Dejah's parents.
Yes. That my parents met at FedEx, and then when my dad wasn't cutting hair, he was a barber. So I also grew up in a barbershop. And when he wasn't cutting hair, he was fishing, and he would take me. I have a sister; she didn't come, but he would take me fishing with him, and it was there.
Wait, did y'all see the shade? She didn't come.
No,
whatever.
I still think about this to this day. I'm like, Daddy, why did you invite me? Where was my sister? But it like was very pivotal for me. I like didn't like fishing. We would go to the bait shop, and I was like, the worms are kind of gross. But I loved being out on the water. And my dad was like, had his beer and he was fishing. And I was like, Daddy, are there sharks in this? He's like, no, it's a lake. And I just like had all these curiosity and questions and fascination. And so, you know, wanted to study environmental science and become a marine biologist. And then got very politicized when I went to college and studied abroad in this insane program where we went to Morocco, Vietnam, Bolivia. It was a climate program. Also during that was learning about Marx and neoliberalism and how that impacted many countries across the world and how that was contributing to climate.
But was any of this being talked about in your home or at school?
It was school and college and study abroad where I started to like connect the science with the like systemic issues. And I was like, oh, this is like an issue of
because you know once Greta Thunberg started doing the same thing, they was like, get her out of there. Stop, she's wearing a keffiyeh. Oh my God.
Yeah. And like standing up for like doing organizing around Palestine now, which is, you know, great to see connecting the climate. But yeah, no, it wasn't like my parents were activists. They were often like work really fucking hard and do what you have to do to be able to sustain yourself. And it was like being politicized through these different experiences where I was like, oh, a lot of the issues, because there was also just things around like food access growing up where I was politicized around like, why is there a McDonald's and Burger King on every corner? And understanding how that connects to like housing discrimination and capitalism. But yeah, it was the politicization and being like, oh, a lot of these issues are actually connected to issues of greed and power. And it's like movement that will address them. So kind of found this.
Yeah, my parents were leftists. I told you that my family's from Kerala. Kerala is one of the very few democratically elected communist governments in the world. And so it was like very normal for me to go back home and see like hammers and sickles painted on things.
Like
and
in
that
India?
was like in India. Yes, it's a state in India.
Can you spell it for me?
Kerala, Kerala. It's also really pretty. It's come through. Yeah, it's really cool. But my parents sort of had some of that orientation, and I feel like really raised me to think of myself as part of a global majority. Like I remember a lot during the Iraq War, like I remember this like nightmare that I had when I was like 5 or 6 years old that like George Bush came to like bomb our school because like because I think the way that my parents thought about it is like these are people who look like us and like they are like there was like a sense of like there is a global majority who is being exploited by a small number of people. And that was like something that I grew up very deeply feeling. So Palestine activist, like I remember my parents like followed BDS when I was a kid, and I was annoyed when I was like 7 because I was like, why can't we get this? And they were like, no. I follow it now. But at 7,
I love it. Why can't we get this? Also, you all need to look up Kerala. I'm going to Kerala.
It's so pretty. It's so nice.
It's on the water. It's giving.
It's beautiful. And that's the other thing too, is I think just like seeing, I don't know, like my grandparents have a farm there. I think like they're just like feeling the ways that climate will deeply affect the place that my parents call home. There were like these really intense floods in Kerala in 2018. And that was, I joined Sunrise before then, but when that was the moment where I was like, oh, this is like not just something I spend my spare time doing. This is like a life commitment and a life purpose, because it felt so, I mean, it was in my backyard, or in my grandparents' backyard. So that was a really transformative moment for me.
Thank you for sharing. I appreciate that. I always try to get to like the heart of people who do this work, because that's what ends up driving us in general. So we have 2 more questions. Carmen asks, with Memorial Day coming and the flag flying, how do you convince people that the military is the biggest polluter in the world? They're like, are they?
No, I think there's stats that there are. I think we've done like political education on social media around this. That's pretty clear.
One thing I always think about with the military is I'm like, people sometimes are like, oh, a federal jobs program, that's so unrealistic. And I'm like, we have a federal jobs program. It's called the military, and we use it to send people to kill other people. And what if instead of doing that, we had a federal jobs program where people were like building windmills and solar panels and teaching kids? And I'm like, that's
things that are actually useful.
nicer.
Yeah.
That's how I think about like reframing, because I'm like, people join it.
Are there other nations that have that?
What?
Are there other nations that have federal jobs programs that are structured in that way?
I think there are a lot of like federal service years. Like I know that my mom did like a federal service year in India where she like worked in a hospital for a while. Like then like that was like a thing that a lot of people do. I don't know if it's like everyone does it. Like it's a lot of like opt-in type things, which the military is also opt-in.
Well, some places.
Yeah,
I mean, it is
not always.
Not.
But yeah, I'm just like, people join the military for like free college and free healthcare.
Yeah.
And we can
just give it
to people without
which is also why. And I saw a video the other day where someone said that they woke up to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night, and it hit them like, oh, we don't take care of our veterans because they're the best trained to lead a revolution. I was like, can you share your bathroom night videos more often, because you saying the things like and she was like, it just hit me like, oh, that's why we don't take care of our veterans. Like they have been trained to only be useful when they're used. And then once they are no longer used, if they remained healthy, they could then be useful against the same government that used them.
And a lot of them are very radicalized against the government. I mean, I think this is like a really big thing that I'm like, I really want to talk about the military in a way that doesn't turn people against the people in the military who are often like Black and brown working class people.
But that's going to have to happen. That's going to have to happen, Aru.
Yeah.
Because shame is like the most effective way to get people to stop doing what they're doing.
Yeah.
Isn't it sad? Like, I feel like we should just be able to be like, here's why. It's just better. And people are like, that's not a good enough reason. That's not, make me feel bad about doing it, and then I'll stop doing it.
Shame does move people.
Shame moves people, particularly in this nation where everything is so much about optics and like what career you're attached to. It's like, I feel like if people felt like they could, also at the end of the day, if people felt like they could get resources in another way, they would not join the military, which is a lot of the reason why those resources are simply just not presented.
I think that's the key to me, because I'm like, it's like I think shame often moves people if you have the resources to make another choice.
Absolutely.
And I'm like, if you don't, no amount of like shaming someone who's like, well, this is like the actual only choice that makes sense for me. And that's why I'm like, the alternative is important, and talking about the alternative is important.
So our last question comes from Nigel. Nigel, you got up in here twice today. Okay, because this is a good question. What is the role of technology in all of this, especially with Generation Alpha and the way the world is going? And I'm going to tack on to that AI.
Yeah, it's interesting because I was in this like politics of climate change course, and they talk there was like a lot of arguments against technology as a solution to climate crisis. Like in some ways, when you think about it, the advancement in technology got us like industrial revolution to the climate crisis, and the unintended consequences of technology often are so high that it is not worth it. And I'm thinking about AI specifically.
Yeah.
And there's just like so much information and data coming out around just like the energy inputs that are needed to fuel AI, and how it's like the water that's needed. I know I've seen videos in like Arizona where folks are like, we don't have water because of this new AI facility. And so I think technology is often a lazy excuse for us to actually address at the root the problem. Like of course, there are like technological solutions around like solar panels and like things that we need to do to upgrade our like energy systems. And I'm not convinced that like AI or technology is going to solve the climate crisis. Like this is a crisis of like economics and our government and political will and greed. And you can't like technology your way out of those issues.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is like sort of building off of that. To me, I do think we need to like invest in technological improvement. And to me, I'm like, I was on a trip to Cuba with Dejah actually a year ago, and we were talking about social media. And in my mind, social media is just this thing that like pulls people out of being present in their lives, and like is so divisive in so many ways and all this. And then somebody was just like, the reason that social media is like that in the US is because it has a profit incentive under capitalism.
Yes.
And so it tries to hold your attention all the time. And I think that's really important with AI as well. I think like anything, I'm like, at the end of the day, if you change the fundamental incentives of your economic system, that these things are just tools. Like AI can be terrible, or AI could be a force for good. And having a government that is actually looking at the whole, looking at the climate effects, looking at the environmental and water effects, and also looking at like, how could we unlock this to be a tool for good is what you need in any type of technology. And like, yes, I really agree with what Dejah's saying. Like technological development is not an excuse to dodge the fundamental problems of power in our society. And also, if we have power in our society, I think we can harness and use technology in amazing and cool ways. But we don't get to, a lot of oil and gas companies are like, yeah, don't worry about it, carbon capture. And I'm like, that's not gonna work, you know?
Yeah, we need to stop burning fossil fuels. And you can't, yeah.
So before we go, just for the sake of taking us back to 7th grade science, name some fossil fuels.
Yes, you have carbon dioxide, you have methane, CH4. Those are like two of the biggest pollutants.
And the way you interact with them in your life is usually that you are using your like gas for the most, gas stoves, gas to heat your house. And also like, you know, I'm not someone who likes to boil this all down to individual choices. Like the industries that we run on, are built on these things.
Well, y'all, thank you for your movement. And how can people under 35 get involved with Sunrise?
Yes, we also have ways for people over 35 to get involved as well.
Oh, okay.
A couple of things for folks. You can check us out on social media. We have an Instagram that shares a lot of the different types of organizing that we're doing at Sunrise Movement. It's at Sunrise MVMT. We also have some other things. If you're under 35 and you're like, I want to join the fight to stop the climate crisis and the oligarchy, you can become a member. And if I drop some of the stuff in the chat, will people get that?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Great.
It's
yes.
smvmt.org/member.
smvmt.org/member. Okay.
Yeah. And then the only other thing is we're about to launch a campaign in a month. And if folks are interested in getting a deeper sense of our strategy and what we're like taking on over the next year, encourage folks to sign up for our campaign launch. And I dropped that link in the chat as well.
And just
to say, like, join your hub. Like, I actually get so much like social joy and purpose from my hub. Like, if you are sitting alone and you're like, I don't know where to go, like doing this with other people makes so much of a difference. And we have so many hubs across the country. There is probably one in your city. And if there's not, we can help you start one.
Did you hear that last part, y'all? She said, if there's not, they can help you start one. And I think that is the kind of people here in this chat. Folks who don't just want to learn, and this takes us back full circle. The Sunrise Movement is not about just talking about it. It's about being about it. So thank you guys so much for exemplifying that. And y'all, you can go to sunrisemovement.org. Go to sunrisemovement.org, and all the info is there. And again, follow them on the Instagrams. And thank you guys so much for joining us and being so, effusive with your knowledge. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much for having us.
Yeah.
Thank y'all. Have a good one.
Bye.
I enjoyed laughing and learning with you. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And tell your friends. Also, listen to the podcast. It's available everywhere pods are casted. Listen ad-free by subscribing to Patreon Amanda Seals. Come on and join the Seals Squad. Views from AmandaLand, live 10 a.m. Eastern, Monday through Wednesday, with content on Thursday and Friday at YouTube Amanda Seals TV. Smart, funny, and